Thank you, program coordinator. Host, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So next is the highlight of today. We have a speaker today. Our guest speaker for today is Aletta Rochat. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And the topic will be interview skills, speak, connect, and succeed. So allow me a few minutes to introduce our guest speaker. Aletta is a certified world-class speaker, speaking coach, as well as an interview coach. She teaches clients how to breathe life into their presentations and to make their messages crystal clear. She teaches her clients how to be noticed, remembered, and hired. Aletta is the author of Speak, Connect, Succeed, Build Your Reputation as You Speak, as well as the Wedding Speaker's Guide. Aletta is an international director for Toastmasters International, as well as a distinguished Toastmaster. She has spoken and trained in over 21 countries. Her clients range from corporations wishing to improve their presentation skills to CEOs wanting to be more persuasive in their speeches. She has coached TEDx speakers, executives launching new products, and professors speaking at international convention. Aletta is lucky enough to live in Cape Town. She's a keen runner who won't win any medals for speed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my dear participants, we give you our guest speaker for today, Aletta.
Good day, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all the way from Cape Town, South Africa. I've had the privilege of being in Malaysia twice in my life, and I have to say that it was a treasured memory both times, not only for the country, but for the people. So it brings me huge pleasure to be with you today to talk to you about interview skills. I was one of these people who was always relatively confident. I was lucky enough to be a Rotary Youth Exchange student, and I also went on Rotary Group Study Exchange.
Dr. B was shared this.
There was no problem for me in terms of being confident enough to speak. And I was always confident going into interviews. And generally, I knew that if I could get the interview, I'd have a high chance of getting the job. And that was all wonderful until one day it didn't work so well. And I remember going for a job interview and being very happy to receive a job offer, but the job offer was for one level below the one that I was interviewing for. And that was a wake-up call for me. I realized then that my winging it and thinking I can just walk into an interview and just talk was no longer a working strategy. A few years ago, I was applying to be an international director with Toastmasters International, and it's an extensive interview process. You have to go through a panel interview just to get through the first round, and then I had to spend virtually 5 days being interviewed nonstop by groups of people. To give you an example, on that very first day, I had, I think, 24 interviews by groups of people, one after the other. And I knew that I needed help. And I reached out to an interview coach. And working with an interview coach, I learned so much that I had no idea was important in an interview. It opened my eyes to what I could do. It opened my eyes to the preparation that I could do to ensure that I did well. And the good news is I was elected. And that sparked in me something, a desire to pass that transformation on to as many people as possible. Because you and I both know that you might have the best CV, you might be committed, a really hard worker, a real asset to a company, but you just don't interview that well. And it's not because there's something wrong with you, it's just because in that tense moment when you might be anxious, you don't come across as your best self. And you're not doing yourself justice. So together with a partner, Teresa Dukes, we have started a business where we teach people interview skills. We want you to be the one who's noticed, remembered, and hired. And today, during our time together, I'm going to share with you some very basic tips to get you going, to get you on that path so that when you go for the interview, you can have the highest chance of being the preferred candidate. I'm not going to share loads and loads of slides. I've got a few slides to share with you. And I'd like you to be ready for one or two of them to take screenshots of them, because they will help you, because as Shirley said to you at the beginning, you're going to be putting this into practice when you are given your assignment. So take careful notes, because you are going to be, as part of your assignment, answering an interview question. But the good news is today I'm going to take you through that question and then show you a technique to help you answer it in an engaging and professional way. So just be ready to take those screenshots. I'm also going to give you a link to download a resource that has a lot of the information I'm talking about today. So be ready to take a screenshot of that link and you can download it when you have a moment. As Shirley said, think of your questions and have them ready for the Q&A at the end. My goal is that by the end of this session, you are going to be confident answering one of the most important interview questions that almost, I can't guarantee you'll be asked it, but there's a very high likelihood it'll come up in your interview. So we all ready? Thumbs up? Yes, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen now, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Please let me know if there's any problem.
Yes, can see your screen.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so today is all about how to show up as your best self. And by your best self, I mean that confident, friendly, engaging person that I would see if I was sitting across the table having a cup of coffee with you. It's that version of you that we want to take into your interview. Even if you're nervous and even if you're slightly anxious, we want you to come across as the real you. Sorry, let me just, there we go. So that's the link if you want to take a screenshot of that. And the resource available to you there is how to guarantee a more professional image in online interviews. As we know, since COVID, the likelihood of your interview being in person at the moment is fairly low, but you have a very high likelihood of being interviewed online. So it's essential that you get comfortable to be engaging in that online space where you've only got your head and shoulders to be visible to you, the people who are interviewing you. So what gets in the way? What stops us having a really, really good interview where we show up as our best self? And often it's the attitude, like I said, I was the winging it kind of girl. And we think that we know it all. Because we know our job so well, we assume that we can just walk in with a job confidence into the interview space. And as I said to you, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Excuse me. The reality is in the COVID world, it is so competitive. It is really, really, really competitive. So you have to do everything in your power to make you stand out from the other candidates, because the winner takes it all. The person who gets offered the job gets everything, and those who come second or third walk away with no job offer. So it's really important to do the work ahead of time. There are lots of resources like YouTube videos, and they are good, they are useful, but there's no substitute for actually putting that theory into action. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So don't just hear the theory, I'll show you techniques to put it into action. Often we don't quite know how to prepare. And today I will take you through some of the techniques to help you be more clear as to how you can prepare to answer those questions. The truth is, we don't interview very often, unless you perhaps a first-time job seeker and you're going for a series of interviews. But most people, you get a job and then you don't interview again for ages and ages. So often our interview skills need to be polished. We need to become comfortable in that space again. It's a bit like if you've been out of the dating world for a while and suddenly you have to start dating again. It's very intimidating at first, and you've got to get comfortable with just being in that space again. And interviewing is very, very similar to that. There is a myth that your CV will do the talking. That if you've got a brilliant CV, which I'm sure you all have, that just by submitting it, people will see how wonderful you are, how talented, how, just what an asset you'll be. The truth is that recruiters often barely look at your CV. Some of them even use a software program to scan your CV for keywords. And if you have enough of those keywords, you might get the interview. But they don't spend a lot of time in your CV. And the reason they have the interview is to see whether or not you are living up to what's on paper. And your job in an interview is to bring your CV to life, to make it come alive in a way that something written on a piece of paper can never do. So don't think that a professional CV will do the talking for you. It won't. But today we're going to tell you how you can show up in that interview so you can bring it to life, to show up as your best self. It is very, very challenging to get the interview. This statistic was based on a survey done in 2016 by Glassdoor. So these are pre-COVID numbers, that on average, companies, when they advertise for a job, get 250 CVs sent in. 250 people, possibly just as talented as you are, just as experienced, just as educated. Of those 250, on average, they might interview 6 people. And of those 6 people who are interviewed, only 1 gets the job. As I said, these are pre-COVID numbers. Some companies, since COVID, are now hiring on a global scale because they've decided their workers can work remotely. So suddenly the pool of potential candidates has got that much bigger, which means your ability to excel at an interview is now, to my way of thinking, no longer an optional extra. It is so competitive that you owe it to yourself and to the future that you are planning for yourself and your family, that you can show up and just be the best you can be in the hopes that you will be the preferred candidate. So how do you go about preparing in a way that makes you edge ahead of the other candidates? There's so much in interviews that you cannot control. You cannot always control who's interviewing you. You cannot control the questions that are coming your way. You cannot control any sort of behind the scenes things that those people are considering. Some companies have quotas. They want so many females and so many males. So you don't know any of that, and that is beyond your control. But what can you control? You can control the preparation. Please, please, please don't be like I was and just wing it and hope for the best. Those days are gone. You can do extraordinary preparation because you believe that you can add value. And I'll articulate some of what that extraordinary preparation is going to look like. It's not enough just to Google the 50 most common interview questions and read them. You have to practice. And when I say practice, I don't just mean in your head. You need to practice out loud how you would answer those questions. I will challenge you as well to go a step further and to record yourself answering that question and be brave enough to watch the recording, because then you'll see how you show up to the recruiters or whoever's interviewing you. And it's only when you see yourself as others see you that you can see the opportunities to improve, and you can see perhaps areas that you need to work on. So that is what I'm calling extraordinary preparation, taking it really seriously, making the time to practice. And if you just practice one interview question a day out loud on a consistent basis and getting feedback from people who can help you improve, that itself is going to put you way ahead of your competition. So take the time, take this seriously, because your whole future depends on it. All sorts of opportunities can come your way as a result of getting the job that you are interviewing for. So don't sell yourself short, but do the work so you have the best choice of opportunities in your future. And when I say seek help, read up on it, find people who can work with you, find people who are in that industry who could give you feedback, find people who can help you take your skills up to the next level. Successful interviews don't happen by chance, they happen by design. And you can choose today to put a work ethic into practice for your interviews that will give you the best chance. And I cannot imagine why you wouldn't do that. I've got a friend who works for a top recruiting company, and she said to me that when she finds a candidate that hasn't done the preparation for the interview, they haven't researched the company, they haven't really taken much time to research the role they are applying to fill, she says alarm bells start going off in her head. The one alarm bell says, do they not know how to do that? Which is quite worrying. And number two is, are they too lazy to do it? Don't they care enough about it? So imagine an interviewer having those thoughts going through their head when you are being interviewed. It's not a good sign. So take it seriously, act as if this really matters, which it does, and do the prep, design your best interview experience way up front. I'm not an expert on designing CVs, but I want to take you through one or two basics. As I said to you, many companies put your CV through a software program, they scan for keywords. So it's essential that you customize your CV to the job role that you are applying for. Look at the job description or the job advertisement and look for keywords and try and make sure that those keywords appear in your job description, in your CV. That'll immediately put you higher up the list in terms of matching the job description. And I know it's a pain. My son at the moment is interviewing for jobs, and I know how much time it takes. It's an inordinate amount of time. But if you want to do well, you just have to invest the time. Research the company. Spend some time on their website. Find out what they stand for. Think about their values and how it relates to your values. Think of reasons why. If you are asked the question, why should we hire you? Why do you want to work here? That you can say something meaningful that relates to something that is important to them. It's very important to research the company. Set up the technology. All of us are comfortable with Zoom. That's the beginner level. Think about so many other things. And I've got another slide where I'll take you through some of those technical setup questions, but make sure you're comfortable with tech. And when you show up for your online interview, have essential information at hand. The names of the people interviewing you, their roles within the company, their titles, understand where they fit in. You need their contact details, because if you suddenly lose signal, you need to be able to phone them or email them or do something to get back online. Have the meeting login details at hand so that without losing any time, you can log back into the meeting if it's necessary to do so. Those are all things that if you have them ready, it gives you that confidence that even if something goes wrong, you've got a plan. So it's essential to be game ready and ready for any eventualities that might come your way. How do you look? And be critical of this. Every day on television, I see people being interviewed. And some of them, you know, the screen is set at the wrong angle and you see the ceiling and only half their face. Or it's too low and you can't see their face at all. Or they've got a bright light behind them and their face is in darkness. Or they've been wearing a mask all day and the mask is just hanging around their face. Take a moment to consider how you look. Make sure that whatever is behind you looks professional. it's tidy, it's free of clutter, it's appropriate. And obviously make sure that what you're wearing is appropriate for the job in terms of the level of formality that you have. So just take some time and set it up well. If possible, make sure that there aren't distracting sounds. I know that's challenging sometimes. You know, whether it's traffic passing by, perhaps close a window. Try and make sure there aren't people coming in and out of the room or pets. Anything that can distract from that calm professional image you are trying to portray. And yes, you can use virtual backgrounds, but just make sure they show up well on screen, because often there's a lot of ghosting on the professional backgrounds and that detracts from you. And if there is ghosting, one trick I've learned is try and put more light onto the area behind you, and sometimes that'll minimize the ghosting. But take time to play around with that. Make sure that you look the absolute best that you can look. We're now going to move on to the question I want you to work with today. A common interview question is, what are your strengths? And for some of us, we struggle to answer that. I don't want you to go through your CV and say, well, I've studied here, I've got this degree. They can read your CV if they choose to. We're looking for something that you can share with them about your strengths that perhaps is not on your CV, or it elaborates what is on your CV. We often tell our students, answer about something you are passionate about. And I'll tell you why. When you are passionate about something, you come alive. So you could talk about your passion for cycling, and you're going to think to me or say to me, Aletta, what has that got to do with a job? But there are many parallels, even if it's a hobby we're talking about. If you plan and train and monitor your performance ahead of a cycling race, those are skills you can use in the business, in your role, planning and preparing and monitoring performance. So you can always relate it back to the job. If it's something you're passionate about on the job front, then absolutely you need to talk about something that you're passionate about doing, because then you come alive, you're more relaxed, you're more confident. It shows, it brings your best self to the interview. So I would definitely encourage you to not just speak about a strength you think they want to hear, but speak about a strength that you are passionate about. So let's go through a little exercise where I help you identify which strength you're going to talk about. And there we go.
Aletta, could you press the play button so that we have the full screen?
Yes, of course.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shirley. Okay. So what are your strengths? What are you good at? What do you do easily that other people struggle to do? What do you see that other people don't? And often it's something quite subtle. It could be that you see that someone is not accepting an idea and is resistant to change, and therefore you're able to address that before you go on to the next point. That is a superb strength that companies need. So think about something that you do easily, that people say, oh, I wish I could do that as well as you can. And then, of course, you've got to relate that to the job. How is that relevant to the job you are applying for? It's so important that whatever you share, and as I said, even if it's your cycling prowess, that it relates back to the job, because then it is purposeful. That's the reason you're sharing it. So I hope by now you've all been able to write down one strength that you're going to work with. Okay, our next step is to think of a story in relation to that strength. The reason you think of a story is that a story adds credibility to your claims. I can say I'm really good at managing teams, but that's a claim that's easy to make. But what story can I tell to bring that to life? And that story gives insight into the way you think, into the way you solve problems, and to the impact you can have. And that story brings your CV to life. It really does make such a difference. So I hope by now you've got a strength and you've got a story. because now I'm going to take you into a technique to help you share that story. And once I've taken you through the theory of the technique, I'll give you an example from my own life of how I would share a story in this way. So this is what we call the STAR Plus technique. Some of you might have heard about the STAR technique. It's a fairly common technique, but the STAR Plus is the one that we find works the best. So it's an acronym. It's the situation, the task, the action, the result, and the plus is the lessons learned. And that plus I'll go through in more detail. So the situation, what situation? What was the context of the story you are sharing? We need to know enough about who was there, what the pressure points were, just enough. You don't need to go into tremendous detail, but enough that we can understand the context that you are coming from. The task is what were you tasked to do as a team? Because generally, if it's a task for a team or if it's a project you're working on, there's a specific task that you were given. So we just need to know what the purpose was of that team or those individuals coming together. The next bit is what action did you take? This is your opportunity to showcase what impact you had. Resist the temptation to say, oh, I was only part of a team. I just played a small part. This is an interview. You need to blow your own trumpet. You need to be able to demonstrate what you did that was valuable to the team and to the task and to the results. Many people struggle with this, but they actually need to come alive and just say, this is what I did. Because if you don't do that, you miss a huge opportunity to demonstrate the value and the impact that you could add and how good you would be as part of that team. So specific action that you took. And again, it doesn't have to be something dramatic. It can be something that you saw, as I mentioned before, that certain people were resistant to the idea. That is a major thing, because if you don't see that, you miss the fact that people are resistant and then it comes back to bite you later. It could be that you took action to improve a process, that you found a more efficient way of doing things, or that you saw an opportunity that nobody else saw. So just own and give enough specifics that we can understand exactly the action you took. The next thing you need to talk about is the result. The result of the action that you took and the impact it had on the situation and the task. So the result, think in terms of the results that are important to companies. So often key performance indicators for companies is saving time, saving money, increasing sales, increasing efficiencies, increasing reputation. So it would be really good to have a story that relates to any one of those results, because those are meaningful and important in a company's eyes. Think about the role you are applying for. What results would be key to success in that role? And think if you've got a story that has a result that relates back to a key result for that particular job. So it's very specific, and this is very purposeful. You are sharing a story, not just for the sake of sharing a story, not just to pass time in the interview. You are sharing a story to showcase how you are the perfect candidate for that job. So it's very, very deliberate, because I don't know how long your interview is, 30, 40 minutes, maybe longer, maybe shorter. You've only got a few minutes to demonstrate that you should be their first choice. And sharing a story that is designed to showcase you in a good light, that is key to using that time well to showcase the fact that you are the person who needs that job and who is the best fit for the company and for the job. So you might want to take a screenshot of this slide just to have that at hand. And probably the next slide as well. So I'll give you a moment or two just for this one. And this is the next one, the STAR plus storytelling. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing, and then I'm going to walk you through an example of that. So storytelling always has various elements. And the first one, as I said, is a situation. And if it's, maybe I should go straight into my example because that'll bring it to life. So a few years ago, I was leading a team of people, and part of what I had to do was to check in with them once a month. So we'd have calls, and the standard format of those calls was a report back. So if there were 5 people on the call, each one would give a report on what they'd done in the past month and what their plans were for the new month. I personally found that very boring. I mean, it's like watching paint dry. And I knew that they were so busy, they didn't want to have to compile a report. You know, that's hard work. And I felt that it wasn't the optimal use of that time together, number one. The other impact of that format was that many people didn't attend the call because, you know, we're all busy. So if you have a call that doesn't give you a lot of value, it's likely you wouldn't show up. So the situation was that people were bored and they were not showing up for the call. The task, my task, was to check in with them every month, and their task was to report back to me on any issues that they needed support on so that we could, you know, get the results we were aiming towards. The action I took was to change the format of the meeting. And instead of asking for the report back, I asked them 2 questions. I wanted to hear from them what they were most proud of that they had achieved in the past month. And I asked them, what is challenging them? What is keeping them awake at night? And then I'd ask the other people on the call to give them input to solve that challenge. So my action was to change the format so that they could, number one, be acknowledged for successes they had achieved, and number 2, be supported in terms of any challenges that they might have, and they could get input from their peers and from me to solve those challenges. The result was that people were far more engaged on the call, attendance went up, and they got so much more value because they got solutions to their problems as opposed to just reading a report. The lesson I learned was that you've got to make it worthwhile for people to show up. Even though they reported to me, that was not that important. What was important was that their interaction with me would give them value that they would be able to use to solve problems and to get results. So that's the lesson I learned. And it's a lesson I've never forgotten because I've used it in all the calls I've had for a similar purpose since that time. So your story needs to go through the STAR technique: situation, task, action, result, and lessons learned. And an important part of that story is the contrast between what the situation was before and what the situation was after. And you'll notice I didn't spend a lot of time on that, but the reason it's important to highlight that is the fact that when you contrast the improvement, you are showcasing the impact you can have. But the story I told was relevant and it was purposeful. So that is the STAR Plus technique in a nutshell. So I know I'm slightly ahead of the time frame we had. I'm just going to stop sharing now so that we can start talking about Q&A. So if you've got a question, please just put it in the chat feature, and then we can start going through them. Sorry, I'm having trouble here getting to that control. There we go. Okay, so I've given you a lot of information. So I'm going to ask the moderators of the group to help me in terms of seeing who's got their hand up for a question, and to help me manage that part of the process. So this is your chance to clarify and to ask for extra details or just to bounce ideas off me.
Yeah, there's
So
one question, Aletta, from Subhashini. And she says that I was working as an accounts clerk in a company as a temporary staff. So I did not really get an opportunity to change something that's impactful to the department. However, I had contributed to an assignment which gained more marks to the group and was highly appreciated by the lecturer. Can that be an example to use for Star Plus? And then she puts there, while this happened while she was doing her MDA.
Yes, especially when you're new into the job market, it is challenging to find examples that are job related, but absolutely. Employers want to get a sense of you beyond the job. So anything you did while you were studying, while you participated in a sports team, while you volunteered at a Rotary event, anything like that has value.
You asked the question.
Even though it's not directly related to the job at hand, it has value. So my suggestion there is to take anything that you feel where you contributed and tell that story, even if it's not directly related to the job. As I said before, even your approach to a cycling race can have business impact because it's those same work ethics, the same way of solving problems that is of value.
Thank you, Ms. Aletta.
Pleasure.
Millie has a question. Millie, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, Aletta, hi. Okay, you know, sometimes when we tell a story, we can get a little carried away, right? So how much is too draggy, and how do we balance that? Like, you know, just enough to tell what it is, you know? Yeah.
That comes through practice, Millie. Some of us are natural storytellers. We all know someone who can tell a story and be so engaging, but it can go on for 10 minutes. If your interview is only 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and you're going to spend 10 of those minutes on one question, it's not good. So as a general rule of thumb, I would say take 2 to 3 minutes maximum. That's quite a lot. But again, it's practice. So if you take that example I gave you now and you recorded an answer on the phone and watched it and saw how long it was and see how you can make it shorter, but still engaging. You know, you don't want to say, I went to college, I helped them solve a problem and everybody applauded. That's too short, obviously. So you need to find that happy balance of just giving enough details that it achieves the result you wanted to achieve, but not too long that it takes up too much time. Because if I'm interviewing candidates and one of them only answers 2 questions and all the other asks 10, I've got a better idea of those ones who answered 10 questions. So aim for about the 2-minute mark. I think that's pretty good.
Another question came in from Praveen, and he said, you mentioned earlier that we should do some research regarding the department, people and their role whom are going to interview us. What if we couldn't obtain that sort of information, since not many companies tend to release such information out like that? Are we still deemed fit and prepared if we don't have such information?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I believe that the most important research you can do is on the company and its values, and to be able to articulate why you want to work for that company. As desperate as you might be and say, I'll work for anyone who'll take me, that's not a good interview question or interview answer. You want to say, I want to work here because I notice one of your values is that you believe in innovation and you believe in diversity and you believe in developing your staff. That really appeals to me. You know, that's the kind of relationship you want in terms of the research you've done. If a company is in the news, you want to know is it in the news for a good reason or a bad reason. You want to know anything that people are saying about them. I'm not asking you to do encyclopedic research, but enough that if I say to you, why do you want to work here? You can have an intelligent answer that shows that you've done some research. In terms of researching the people, I know some people advocate that if you hear that Aletta Rochat is interviewing you, that you'll go and stalk me on LinkedIn and kind of read up on me. You can do that if you can. that is not as important as researching the company and understanding the role. If find out what that company is known for. Find out, are they innovating? Have they got awards recently? Anything that you can find that just gives you something of substance that you can refer to demonstrate that you actually have done the work, that you're not just arriving and saying, oh gosh, I wonder which interview this is. That's what you're trying to avoid. Enough research to show that you've taken this interview seriously.
All right, another question from Haslina. She says, is there any differences between STAR and CAR module of interview?
I'm not familiar with the CAR. I'm sure there are many different techniques. So you're welcome to use any one that works for you, as long as it makes sure that you answer the question and that you highlight your strengths in relation to that question and in relation to the role. So do your research and practice the ones that you're hoping to use. The STAR Plus works exceptionally well for those questions when they say, tell me about a time when you had to deal with conflict. Or tell me about a time when you didn't agree with a decision that your boss had made. Tell me about a time or describe a situation when those kind of questions, we call them often behavioral questions, they lend themselves to the STAR Plus technique. So think of that, storytelling, STAR Plus.
Thanks, Aletta. Now another question from Phelan. She said, to add on to Millie's question, how does one blow their own trumpet without sounding arrogant? Could you perhaps give some key indicators or characteristics of a clearly overblown trumpet?
What a wonderful way of putting it. I would not be happy if I was interviewing someone and they said, well, I led the team and I did this, and thank goodness I was in place because they just didn't see it the way I saw it. And if it wasn't for me, the whole thing would have been a disaster. That is like so arrogant. One of the key things companies are looking for, they're looking for people who are team players. They don't want a prima donna. So if you come in and describe similar to what I've just said, you come across to me like a prima donna. But if you said, we were working hard to achieve this goal, and I noticed that one of the things that we'd missed out on was an opportunity to be more efficient in this one step. I presented it to the team and we discussed it, they brought it in, and as a result, we changed what we did and it was more efficient. That tells me that you had a key part to play, but it also tells me that you had to get buy-in from the people you work with. You showed respect for them, and you still showed your commitment to the common goal of the team. So that is blowing your trumpet and showing me that you know what you're doing and that you can have an impact without me getting the sense that you're going to upset people along the way, or that you think it's only your good work that saved the day. So arrogance is not good, but confidence and assertiveness is good. But practice doing it. It's very hard in the moment when you're anxious in an interview to come up with a story and tell it in a way that does it justice. So by practicing it ahead of time, it's much easier for you.
Subhashini again, she says, I have a habit of getting feedbacks about me at the end of an interview to improve myself. Are there any other questions or gestures that would be subtly impressive?
Oh yes, this is one of my favorites. What questions to ask at the end? Please don't ask, how many different types of sandwiches do you have in the canteen? Don't ask stuff like that. It's an opportunity again to showcase your results. So you can say, one of the things I love about working on a project team is the ability to think out of the box, to find new ways of doing things. In this role, are there opportunities for us to do that as a team? So what I've just done is I've told you something I'm good at, which maybe you hadn't mentioned prior in the interview. And I've said that I thrive working in a team. And would it be possible to have that similar experience here? So it's linking what you're good at to the potential opportunity. Another example would be, I really look forward to opportunities to upskill myself in my role. What training opportunities do you offer your staff in this role? That's another way of using the question at the end to highlight something that you're good at or something you want to bring to the team.
Iswana has a question. She says, is there any color code for dressing for an interview?
Dress in something that makes you feel like $1 million, something that you're comfortable with. I would say every industry has different norms. If you're going for an interview in a banking industry, for a guy, it's probably suit and ties, and ladies, dresses and jackets. But if you're going for a role in an IT company, often the dress code is a lot more casual. So my general advice is dress slightly better than you think you need to. But you must feel professional, and you must feel smart, and you must feel comfortable. And I know all of us sometimes on a hot day will have shorts on underneath and a business top, but be careful, because if there's suddenly a spider that runs across the desk and you jump up and then everybody can see you not dressed properly, don't take that chance. Make sure that even if you have to stand up, that you are still in business attire.
So far, I think that's it. No other questions in the chat area. But however, I have one question for you, Aletta. Now, in view of the current situation with COVID-19 and all, and with businesses being badly affected, it's also the same in terms in the employment market too. So the challenge is now even greater for those in the employment to actually try to stand out among the rest. So maybe you could share with us some additional advice or tips for people who are actually facing this challenge, and how else besides Star Plus can we bring ourselves up and be the highlight.
Often because of COVID, people have lost jobs or they have been unable to find jobs. That's just a reality. So a gap in your CV is probably quite likely at some point. My advice to you is to, if you have a gap in your CV or if you haven't been able to get a job, is to be able to articulate how you've used that time to improve yourself. You can talk about this course that you are on now with Rotary Youth Leadership. You can talk about any volunteer work you've done, any courses you've done, any way you've contributed to your community. Those are all leadership skills, and it demonstrates that you are willing to invest in yourself and be productive even if you haven't been able to secure employment. So you can turn the potential negative of a gap in your CV to something quite positive, and to say, well, in addition to volunteering here, I've done a course to upskill myself on this aspect of my skill set, and I have given to my community by doing X, Y, or Z. So turn any gaps into a positive, and I think people would be impressed that you haven't just sat at home, but you've become a better person as a result of that.
One question just popped out by Eldon, and he's like, how can we bargain with the interviewer regarding our salary?
Okay, my advice on that is, number one, don't raise it too early. The best time to raise salary is once they really like you. So I tend to say, get to the first interview, get the second interview, make sure they're virtually ready to offer you the job, and then you raise salary. But do your homework again, know what the norm is. I listened to a podcast recently and they said people, when asked what is the salary you want, people who give a range rather than one number tend to get a higher salary. But you can't just pick a number out the sky. You've got to kind of have a grounding in reality. What is a good range for that job? If you are going through an agency, they will often ask you that right up front, what salary do you want? And they use that as a filtering tool to either decide, well, if you want $100 and we're only offering 25, clearly it's not a match. But when it gets to the serious discussion about salary, my advice is impress this, be so impressive and make sure they want you, and then talk about salary. You've got more leverage then. If you raise it too early, you run the risk of just being demanding. So often if you asked and you're not ready to discuss that yet, just say, you know, I'd prefer that we go through the interview process to make sure that we're a good fit for one another. And once we've established that, I think that would be a better time to talk about salary. It shows that you're quite assertive, because remember, you interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. And you've got to be assured in your own mind that they're a good fit for you as well as you for them.
All right, thank you very much, Aletta. Oh, one more question just came in. My main weaknesses is when I try to pronounce a word, the person I'm talking may not hear it properly. Sometimes I will take time to get used in a job. What if, for example, a company looking for workers but only wants someone perfect in everything? Lisa Shen. Yes, Lisa Shen asked this question.
That's a very real question. And you know, as I said to you, my son is looking for interviews at the moment. So I'm looking at lots of job specs just to see what's out there. And some of them only want people who are at the, you know, the top 10% of their class or went to a certain university. Some of them have different needs, and some of them might want absolute fluent language skills, and others might be happy with whatever you bring. So that is one of those things that you can't control. My advice to you is, if there are certain words that you struggle to pronounce, then just practice. Practice the ones that you know cause you trouble and try and get better at it. And but remember, it's not, if they're seeing the whole you, pronouncing one or two words is not going to be the deal breaker. It's an overall picture they're looking for. So make sure that whatever else you do is great, so that even if you stumble across the word, it's not the focal point. And you've got to develop the ability to not let that rattle you and not get very upset when that happens, but just to cope and to go on to the next question. So again, some things you can't control. The ones that you can control, preparation and practice helps you, but your whole package is more than just the way you pronounce words. That's my belief.
Okay, thank you, Aletta. I think that's it for the questions that have come in. I'll pass over now to the MC.
Thank you, Aletta, and thank you, Shirley. Host, can I have the slides, please? Next in the program, I'd like to invite Shirley Ho, our program coordinator, for a word of thanks to our guest speaker.
Thank you, MC Raj. Thank you very much, Aletta. There's a few key points from your sharing today. I like how you said, you know, you want to ensure that we get noticed, remembered, and hired. And also, I like that phrase where successful interviews don't happen by chance. They actually happen by design, which is so true, because practice always makes perfect. And at the end of the day, looking at how we have to understand why we need to show up professionally for an interview. I like the part where you say how you have to adjust the camera so that you are showing the right angle, because while you were saying that, you know, there were a few of us who actually started adjusting the camera and making sure the angle was right, you know, even though it's not an interview today, but, you know, it's these little things that actually play an important role. And of course, even the attire that we are having on, very important. Do take note, participants, because every little thing that Aletta was highlighting today is going to be very important in your assignment topics also. All right. And of course, for sharing with us the Star Plus technique, because at the end of the day, from what I understand, with more and more challenges coming into the employment market day by day, it's more important now for us to really understand our strength and to tell the real story. People actually want to listen to the real thing. It's no longer reading off our CVs anymore, or even like what you put, let the CV do the talking for us. It doesn't work anymore. Maybe it was applicable many years ago, but it's not so now. So it's so true. We all need to learn to know how to tell our story. That's very important. But before I end, I just wanted to ask one last question came in from Jivitra just after I concluded, but I think it's an important question, because this was also a question that we asked our candidates when they registered. One of the questions that we did ask our candidates at the point of registering for this session was, what were their 3 key strengths, or what were their strengths, So we had some very serious answers and we had some very hilarious answers too. And there was another question that we asked, and I guess Jivitra is bringing this up also. How do you answer a question? Where would you like to see yourself in 5 years' time?
That is such a common interview question, and you are quite likely to be asked it. You've got to answer it from a place of authenticity. There's different ways of answering it. You could say, well, I want to be CEO, if that's even, possible in 5 years. But maybe a better way to answer it would be to say, I want to see myself being a leader of a team where I'm having, tremendous impact and contribution. And I want to see my efforts pay off in terms of the success of the company I'm working for. And if you're really clever, you'll say the name of the company that you're interviewing for. So I think avoid the trap of trying to reach a certain level, but demonstrate that in 5 years' time, you want to be accomplished in various tasks. You see yourself at the next level or two leading a team, but most of all that your work adds value and is a valuable contribution to the company. So that's kind of a general suggestion. But again, practice it, because it's got to be authentic to you. It's got to make sense to you and sound like it's real. It can't sound like, okay, I'm going to give them the answer I think they want to hear. It's like when people say, what is your weakness? And people think, if I say I'm a perfectionist, then they get away with it. No. Rather say, my email inbox isn't as neat and everything's not filed immediately, but I've learned to use software to help me do that. So it's not about the weakness, it's what are you doing to address the weakness, so that you're aware of it. And we've all got weaknesses. I mean, show me somebody who doesn't, they don't exist. But it's what are you doing to manage that weakness? That's of more importance.
Yeah, so on behalf of Rotary, thank you so much, Aletta. I think all the tips and all the pointers that you have given to our participants today is really valuable. In fact, even the committee members who are here also, we are also learning every day with all these points that have been given, because it's not only just relevant to the workforce, but it's also relevant in our day-to-day life. So thank you so much, Aletta. Dr. B, can I have the certificate? Thank you. This is our certificate of appreciation, Aletta, from the Rotary Club of, from the Rotary District 3300 Malaysia, for your contribution towards the session today in empowering our youths, and for in the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards 2020-2021. And this will be posted to you, Aletta. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. And off to you now, MC.
Thank you, Shirley. Next in the program, we are moving to the assignment tip by Karthi Palnisamy, RYLA co-chairman. Can we have the slide, Mr. Host?
Thank you, Raj. Just waiting for the slides. Come on. Okay. Well, I thought the session was pretty good. I'm 56 years old and I'm still learning. I thought, if I've listened to Aletta's presentation some 35 years ago, it would have made a huge change in my career. I would have been kicked out of interviews so many times. Yeah, thank you, Aletta. I thought it was very, very interesting. And I'm also glad that, that Rotary had played a part in molding you. I heard at the beginning that you were a group study exchange student. So yes, Rotary has done well by producing a GAC student who has done well. Thank you, Aletta. We thought we'd just go on to quick tips. As you know, at the end of this entire 4 or 5 online training sessions, we will be tasked upon to choose 50 of these participants to attend our live training, right? And we thought we'll share with you some of the tips that will help you when you do your assignment. Remember that there are close to 100 participants who are applying for these coveted 50 spots for the live session. So we are going to look at your presentation and how you think you stand out amongst those people to help us choose our final candidates for the live session. So very quickly, let me just go to the next slide. So you'll be given two assignments. One is a written assignment that you got to do, and I think we're looking at something around 200 words or so, or maybe 1,000 words, so depending on what you would choose. So that assignment will come on at the end of this entire session. So we'll be very specific later, and you'll also be given to do a video assignment. We want you to be able to tell us why you think you should be chosen as the converted, for the live session. So the two assignments you got to do. One is a written assignment, and two, a video assignment. Next. And of course, in helping you frame these two assignments, you've got to listen to the presentation. I thought Aletta kept us all on our seats, at least listening. So you've got to basically listen to all the presentations. So when you do an overview at the tail end of your entire series, you got to basically understand the presentation and tell us what you felt you learned from all these presentations. Next. And of course, it's in you will be excited with all the 4 different trainers, right? But you need to plan before you execute. Sit down, map out your presentation, what you want to say, how you want to express them, and tell us about the entire 4 sessions or 5 sessions you have attended. So plan before you put pen to paper. Next. And Aletta has, and also Shirley has said it a few times now. You need to tell your story. It needs to come from you on how this sessions have made a difference to you, how it has helped you. So you got to be expressive. Share with us. You must remember that we are looking at 100 applicants, right? So your opportunity here is to be able to tell us your story, make us feel how you understood, you learned, and be expressive so that it'll be easier for us to make that choice. And we always tell you, think outside the box. In Rotary, we say there's no box. So be as expressive as you want to, be as creative as you want to. It is an opportunity for you to sell yourself. Tell us what you learned. Tell us why we should choose you. And at the end of the day, yeah, get your assignments done. So it's very quick. These are just short tips for you to help you map out your entire presentation. And Shirley, who's our program director, will tell you, will crystallize your assignments at the end of the fourth session. Thank you.
Thank you, Karthi. Thank you. Don't go away. Please come back for the closing address. Karthi.
Oh, you mean okay? Closing. I thought it was an interesting session. I know I had to rush back for this thing, but I thought it was very, very interesting. Aletta, thank you very much. I thought your staff was very, very exciting. A lot of things you say, a lot of us practice it, but at least you managed to crystallize those things in the manner in which you present it to all of us. Participants, it's exciting working with you guys. RYLA is an excellent program. And very often when you finally go for an interview, I must tell you this story that I tell people. I've had at least 100 people come through me in interviews. And I have, of course, been biased when I see someone with a RYLA certificate, because I know the person has gone through a RYLA program, a Rotary Youth Leadership Award. Remember that this is not a program, it is an award that you receive at the tail end of this presentation or tail end of this entire program. So putting it together was exciting, trying to get young people trained in these 2 areas of entrepreneurship and employability was exciting. We hope that you will stay on for all the 4 sessions, do a great presentation and pitch yourself and ensuring that you get your final place at the live RYLA session. So it was exciting working with you guys. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks time, right, Shirley? For the next session?
In 2 weeks' time.
In 2 weeks time.
In a month's time.
Month.
Yeah, in a month's time. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all of y'all for having spent this evening with us. And good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.